In September 1984, a small group of researchers walked into a canyon in southeastern Colorado before dawn, set up a camera in front of a crack in the rock, and waited. One of them had stated in advance exactly what the sunrise would do inside that crack. It did it. That canyon is in Colorado, and it is nowhere near the strangest thing we found there. That place makes this list. So do 10 others. A stone wall running across bare tundra at 12,000 feet, built by people who never spent a single winter up there. A village of 600 rooms lying under a working farm valley, never once excavated. Stick with us to the end, because number 1 is a sandstone butte where at least 41 people died in one attack, and a carving of an armed figure aiming at an unarmed one, cut into the rock a short walk from where the bodies were found. This channel is about the places history left behind and the questions nobody closed. If that is your kind of thing, subscribe. Today, we are counting down 11 ancient sites in Colorado that scientists can't explain. Number 11. Canyon Pintado, the painted canyon nobody slows down for. 15 miles of State Highway 139 runs south out of Rangeley in Rio Blanco County, through a historic district covering more than 16,000 acres of public land. 16 signed rock art sites sit along that stretch. Most people drive past all 16. The canyon was named in 1776 when the Dominguez Escalante expedition came through with Ute guides and called it the Painted Canyon. The walls carry at least 3 separate traditions: Fremont, Ute, and Barrier Canyon. The Fremont were in this country from roughly AD 800 to 1150. Some of the Barrier Canyon work may be 4,000 years old. People have been in this canyon for a minimum of 11,000 years. At the Carrotman site, painted human figures sit directly on top of older animal figures pecked into the same rock. 2 techniques, 2 eras, 1 surface. Somebody came back centuries later and deliberately covered an ancestor's work. It is free, signed, and open year-round. You are asked not to touch anything because the oil in a fingerprint permanently alters the stone. The name Carrotmen is ours. Nobody has any idea what the people who painted them were actually looking at. Number 10. The Mahaffy Cache, the ice age that fell out of someone's front yard. Not every ancient site in Colorado requires a drive. In May 2008, a landscaping crew working a residential lot inside Boulder city limits put a shovel into the ground and hit stone. What came out was 83 implements, from large, finely worked bifacial knives down to small blades and flint scraps, buried for roughly 13,000 years. The homeowner assumed they were a few hundred years old. He called the University of Colorado Anthropology Department the same day. Professor Douglas Bamforth was standing in the yard the next morning. The tools went to a lab at California State University, Bakersfield. Protein residue testing found traces of extinct Ice Age camel and horse. It was the first time camel protein had been identified on North American stone tools, and only the second time horse protein had turned up on a Clovis Age tool. A third tool tested positive for sheep, a fourth for bear. Bamforth's read was that this was storage. Somebody gathered their best tools, dug a hole, and buried them, fully expecting to come back for them. They never came back. Whoever hid those knives was planning on an ordinary week. Number 9. Old Man Mountain, Estes Park. It rises directly west of downtown Estes Park in Larimer County, and it is not an impressive mountain. Prominence of about 250 feet. No marked trail, no official trailhead. You pick a line through the boulders and scramble roughly 45 minutes up and 30 back down. From the top, you can see Long's Peak, Mount Meeker, Twin Sisters, and the Continental Divide, all of which are dramatically larger than the thing you are standing on. And yet this is the hill people came to. In 1985, the archaeologist James Benedict published a monograph on it through the Center for Mountain Archaeology, titled simply Old Man Mountain, a vision quest site in the Colorado High Country. It is one of only 3 documented vision quest sites in the state. A vision quest is a deliberate ordeal. You climb, you fast, you pray, you make offerings, and you wait. Sometimes for days. The artifact record has been interpreted as showing visits by peoples from the plains, the Great Basin, the Colorado Plateau, and the Rockies, groups with no shared language, all identifying the same modest granite dome as the right place. 16 acres of it now sit under a conservation easement. Here is the detail that stops people cold. Some visitors still climb it for the original reason, and downtown is a 15-minute walk away. Number 8. The Alpine Game Drives. Trowbridge Road tops out at 12,183 feet. Above the trees, there is nothing but cushion plants, frost-shattered rock, and weather you can watch arriving from 30 miles out. Millions of people drive it every summer and look straight at what's up there without seeing it. On Flattop Mountain, one site alone holds 90 rock blinds, 14 rock walls, and 848 prehistoric cairns, which researchers separate into 9 independent systems. Nearly 100 projectile points have come off the surface. At Rollins Pass, 12 related sites hold over 8,000 meters of wall and 187 blinds. More than 80 of these drives are known along the Continental Divide in northern Colorado. They are hunting machinery. The walls are low, not high enough to stop an animal, just high enough to make it choose a different line. They converge on saddles, and at the convergence in the kill zone sit the blinds. 15 to 20 hunters were needed to run one properly. People built and rebuilt these for thousands of years. Despite intensive survey, archaeologists have found no evidence anybody wintered up there. They climbed, they hunted, they went back down. To work out what the drives were built for, Benedict didn't dig. He counted droppings. His 1994 survey showed elk were still the primary animals using the corridors. The trap has been abandoned for centuries, and the elk are still walking into it. Number 7. The Holly Solstice Panel. Hovenweep National Monument. 2 boulders fell off a canyon rim at some unknown point in geological time and happened to leave a narrow gap between them. That's it. That's the entire apparatus. At the Holly Unit in Montezuma County, at the head of the North Fork of Keeley Canyon, the Park Service states plainly that they believe the ancestral Puebloans used this spot to mark the summer solstice. On and around the longest day, a beam of light comes through that gap and strikes the boulder face below. On the rock are 3 circular symbols, 2 spirals, and 1 sun made of concentric circles. The beam bisects them. NASA's Sun-Earth Day project documented it. 2 separate shafts of light, one from the left and one from the right, meeting in the center within minutes to form a single band. Here's the thing. Nobody engineered this. The rockfall was random, which means somebody had to be sitting in exactly that spot at sunrise, on or near one specific morning of the year, and noticed the light was doing something it did not do the day before. Then they had to come back the following year to check. The year after that, the site was depopulated around 1300. The panel is still visible from an overlook at the end of a short trail in the first dark sky park to span 2 states. Somebody watched that gap for a generation before they were willing to cut into the rock. Number 6. Falls Creek, outside Durango. 15 minutes northwest of downtown Durango, there is a flat, grassy valley with sandstone cliffs on both sides and one enormous alcove gaping in the west wall. Half of that valley is closed to every human being. Permanently. The Falls Creek rock shelters are the type site for the Eastern Basket Maker II, period, meaning this is the reference point the entire period is defined against. Basket Maker II houses were first identified here. The north shelter alone runs about 76 meters long and 11 deep, with the ceiling 10 meters overhead. Occupation stretches back at least to 700 BCE. In 1937, local amateur archaeologists opened the shelters and found a burial crevice. The dry alcove air had preserved the remains inside to a standard rarely matched anywhere in the United States. The find was significant enough that Earl Morris, the leading southwestern archaeologist of his generation, came to Durango to excavate properly, and what he found rewrote a chapter of American prehistory. Then came 50 years of the remains being studied, argued over, and moved. In the end, descendant Pueblo communities intervened and secured reburial. The Forest Service closed the shelters, rerouted recreation to the far side of the valley, and deliberately kept the parking minimal. There is one interpretive sign. It talks about basket maker culture in general terms and says nothing at all about the shelters or what was taken out of them. That silence was chosen on purpose, and it is the most honest thing in the valley. We opened this video in a canyon in Baca County. Tell us in the comments if that one caught you off guard. If you are enjoying the deep dive, a thumbs up genuinely helps these stories reach more people. The last 5 get considerably stranger. Number 5. Yucca House National Monument. There is a city buried in a farm valley southwest of Cortez, and in more than 100 years, nobody has opened it. Yucca House was made a national monument in 1919 by proclamation of President Woodrow Wilson. It covers roughly 34 acres at the foot of Sleeping Ute Mountain. Between AD 1100 and 1300, the Montezuma Valley around it held something like 13,000 people, and Yucca House was one of their major centers from about 1150 to 1300. The official inventory of what is down there reads: 600 rooms, 100 kivas, several towers, multiple plazas, 1 great kiva, and unexplained structures. One building, called Upper House, measures roughly 80 by 100 feet. Its ruins stand 12 to 15 feet high, and may originally have been twice that. A spring still runs through the complex. Almost none of it has been excavated. That was a decision, not an oversight. Every dig destroys the context it reads, and the techniques keep improving, so the Park Service left it. The result is that one of the largest ancestral Puebloan villages in Colorado now looks like a field of low grassy mounds. The Park Service says openly that questions remain about its relationship to Chaco and to Mesa Verde, and that the ground here could help explain why the region emptied out in the late 1200 seconds. The answer may well be sitting 3 feet down. Somebody decided to leave that question for people who aren't born yet. Number 4. Crack Cave. Picture Canyon. Baca County has a population of a little over 4,000 people. Out in the Comanche National Grassland, where the shortgrass prairie drops into a broad canyon, there is a vertical cleft in the west wall with a steel gate bolted across it. The Forest Service keeps that gate padlocked for 363 days a year. Twice a year on the equinoxes, they unlock it. In the mid-1970s, someone noticed that a set of incised lines deep inside the crevice were lit only by the equinox sunrise. The effect is narrow and specific. The light doesn't fall into the cave at sunrise at all until you're within a few days of the equinox, and the alignment itself lasts 12 to 15 minutes. Then it got complicated. Bill McGlone, an amateur who had taught himself Ogham, the ancient Irish script of strokes cut against the baseline, became convinced the lines were writing. He translated part of it as an announcement that the sun strikes here at the vernal equinox. Then he did something genuinely admirable. He made a prediction, brought a camera back in September 1984, and filmed the sunrise doing what he said it would. The alignment is real. The translation is contested. The archaeologist Kenneth Fetter, who has spent a career on fraudulent inscriptions in North America, visited in 2015 and made the obvious objection: a vowelless American Ogham, where the translator supplies the vowels, can be made to say almost anything. People book months ahead, drive out into the dark, and walk a mile by headlamp to watch a 40-year argument play out in 15 minutes of light. The prairie doesn't care who wins. It does the whole thing again in 6 months. Number 3. Chimney Rock. Consider how bad an idea this was. A narrow sandstone ridge in Archaeology County, 7,620 feet up, with no easy access to water, food, or firewood. The ancestral Puebloans hauled stone and timber up there and built a Chicoan great house on top of it. There is one thing you can do from that ridge that you cannot do anywhere else. 2 rock pinnacles stand at the end of it, Chimney Rock and Canyon Rock. From the great house, and only from the great house, a sliver of sky appears between them. Every 18.6 years, at the major lunar standstill, the moon rises into that gap. The moon's orbit wobbles on that cycle. Detecting it requires recording moonrise positions across more than one human lifetime. The construction dates line up, the 2 major building phases, 1076 and 1093, plus an earlier date of 1018, all coincide with the northern major standstill. A date of 1011 matches the minor standstill. McKim Malville demonstrated the alignment in 1987 and published it in 1991. Then tree ring work in 2009 found something better. Timber cut during a standstill more than half a century before the Great House existed had been built into its walls, salvaged almost certainly from earlier structures raised to mark the same cycle. Somebody was keeping score across generations. Of all known Chicoan outliers, this is the highest, the most isolated, and the furthest northeast. More than 200 buildings sit within the monument. By around 1125, everyone had gone. Why they built it and why they left are both still open questions. The last standstill was watched from that ridge in October 2024. The count is still running and nobody is left up there keeping it. Number 2. Sunday Temple, Mesa Verde. The building with no doors. By the 1,270 seconds, Mesa Verde was failing. More than 22,000 people may have lived on and around it at the start of that century. They had already pulled back off the open mesa tops into defensible cliff alcoves. The Great Drought was closing in, and at that exact moment, they started building something enormous. On a promontory of Chapin Mesa, above the confluence of 2 canyons, chosen so it could be seen from every direction. A D-shaped double wall, 122 feet long and 64 across, walls 4 feet thick, enclosing 2 circular tower rooms. No windows, no doors, no hearths, no food storage, no trash. Nobody ever lived in it, and nobody has established what it was for. The dating is genuinely uncertain. There are almost no artifacts and almost no wood to date, so estimates run anywhere from around 1200 to the mid-1270s. There is no roof timber at all. The traditional reading, going back to Fuchs a century ago, is that construction simply stopped when the people left. That conclusion has since been challenged, which tells you how thin the ground is here. Then in 2017, the researcher Sherry Towers published a survey of the layout. She found golden rectangles, squares, 45-degree triangles, 3, 4, 5 triangles, and equilateral triangles, all built on a single repeating unit of about 30.5 centimeters, near enough a modern foot, laid out to roughly 1% precision. The ancestral Puebloans had no writing system and no numerals. Towers' point is that this was done with cord and sticks. It sits at a pull-off on a paved loop road. Everyone stops for the Cliff Palace overlook, takes the photograph, and drives past the one building on the mesa nobody can account for. Number 1. Castle Rock Pueblo, McElmo Canyon. A freestanding sandstone butte rises off a slick rock plain, red rock against an enormous sky. There is sage and rabbit brush and gravel, and almost no sound at all except wind moving across the stone. Down at the base there is tumbled masonry, worked blocks scattered and half buried, most of it unrecognizable as anything. Now on a weekend, there will be cars in the parking area a short walk away, and people eating lunch on the rocks. Around 1256, people started building here. 16 kivas, 40 surface rooms, 9 towers on and around the buttes. They chose this spot because it could be defended, and they added towers because they expected to need them. Across the whole region in those decades, village after village was relocating to defensible ground. The archaeologist Kristen Kuckelman put it plainly, those were not imagined threats. Between 75 and 150 people lived here. In 1276, the Great Drought began. At nearby Sand Canyon, the food remains show a farming society falling back onto hunting and gathering, a community running out of options. Sometime in the mid-1280s, someone came for Castle Rock. At least 41 of the residents were killed. Infants, children, teenagers, adult men and women. Excavations by the Crow Canyon Archaeological Center between 1990 and 1994 found remains lying directly on structure floors and others in collapsed roofing material inside the buildings. Nobody buried them, which means there was nobody left in any condition to come back and do it. Who attacked is the one question that stays open. There is no archaeological trace of an outside force large enough. Kuckelman's own conclusion is that the attackers were most likely Puebloan people from within the region, and that the pressure was probably food and water. A short walk from where the bodies were found, there is a petroglyph on the rock. 2 figures with bows and arrows. One of them is aiming directly at a third figure who is holding nothing. Within about 15 years, the whole region was empty. The people who survived moved south to the Rio Grande and the Hopi Mesas, where their descendants live today. This is not a vanished civilization, it is a living one, with an extremely bad year in its history. Monument staff have said they would rather not discuss what happened here publicly, and they worked with the consulting tribes to move the trailhead so visitors would stop walking across it. The carving is still on the rock. So are the people it belongs to, and they have asked us to be careful with this one. There are more of these than we could fit. Colorado has thousands of recorded sites, and only a fraction have ever been touched. My own favorite is Yucca House, purely because somebody looked at a buried city and chose patience. Which of these caught you off guard, and which one did we miss? Subscribe and we'll keep